She's guilty too. Those three words from Prince Aldrich exploded across headlines, dragging Lady Miranda Hale into the royal firestorm. Stripped of his titles by Prince Alastair, Aldrich gave a bitter final interview and dropped a name no one expected. "Miranda's hands aren't clean," he whispered. As the monarchy reeled from scandal, the public demanded answers. Was this truth or revenge? One thing was certain. With Aldrich exiled and Miranda exposed, the royal family would never be the same. The night everything changed. It was a fog-wrapped evening at Greystone Manor, Prince Aldrich's secluded estate on the outskirts of Windsor. Stripped of his titles just days earlier, the disgraced royal sat before a lone interviewer with no lights, no teleprompters, just bitterness in his voice and shadows on his face. It was October 27th, 2025, and Aldrich was done playing palace games. "She's hardly innocent," he murmured, eyes steady. "Lady Miranda? She's down in the dirt with me." The words sent a jolt through the room. The journalist leaned forward, stunned. The cameras weren't rolling, but the moment was burned into memory. That quote, hours later, would be leaked, and within 24 hours, it would dominate global headlines. No one could have imagined that after losing everything, Aldrich's final strike wouldn't just be against the monarchy, but against another exiled royal. Was it a calculated hit? A bitter man dragging others down with him? Or was it something more dangerous? The confession marked a new chapter in the Crown's deepest scandal, and Miranda Hale was suddenly back at its center. The palace tried to keep things quiet, but by the morning of October 28th, Aldrich's quote had been picked up in 17 countries, plastered across every screen and newspaper. Within hours, attention turned to the woman he had named, Lady Miranda Hale, once the star of the modern monarchy. What did Aldrich mean by down in the dirt? And why now? As the royal family scrambled behind the scenes, the press began digging, and what they found opened old wounds the monarchy thought were buried. From hero to hazard. Prince Aldrich was once untouchable, decorated naval officer, the Queen's favorite son, loyal brother to King Rowan. But that was before his name became entangled with Eldrin Vale, the late billionaire whose crimes had rippled across continents. It all started in 2019, with the now infamous photo in Vale's Manhattan townhouse, and it spiraled from there. In 2022, Aldrich settled with Isabel Dervin, a former associate of Vale, for £12 million. No admission of guilt, no trial. But the damage was done. Public trust evaporated. Protests followed him to every appearance. Quietly, his duties shrank. By 2023, he was rarely seen. By 2024, his name was a punchline. But the final blow came on October 30th, 2025, when the Crown formally cut ties. King Rowan signed the document, but it was Prince Alastair who delivered it. Aldrich lost his royal styling, military honors, and residence at Northmere Lodge. Security details were pulled. His crest was removed from royal websites within hours. It wasn't just a demotion. It was erasure, a calculated strike to protect the crown from further decay. But Aldrich didn't go quietly. Within 48 hours, he sat down for the unfiltered, off-record interview that lit the match. And with one sentence, one name, he dragged Lady Miranda Hale back into the flames. Aldrich's confession was enough to flood inboxes across media agencies. Whispers became headlines. Investigators pulled old files, reporters searched photo archives, and palace staff panicked. Why had he named Miranda? Was there any truth behind it? or just vengeance? As the scandal grew, attention turned not to Aldrich, but to Lady Mirana's past. Her Hollywood years, her connections, her secrets. And for the first time in years, the palace couldn't control the narrative. The Veil Web. Lady Mirana Hale's journey from TV star to Duchess had always been seen as a fairy tale. Until now. In the days following Aldrich's bombshell, media outlets began piecing together overlapping circles from her 2010 to 2014 Hollywood era. Events, donors, guests, and quietly, Eldrin Vale's name began to surface. No proof, no charges, but reports suggested she attended 2 charity galas Vale's company sponsored, one in Los Angeles, 2012, another in New York, 2013. Photographers caught her smiling near figures now blacklisted. Old guest lists were reanalyzed. One name, M. Hale, placed within proximity to Vale, and Prince Aldrich. The tabloids exploded. Her former publicist from that time issued a brief denial. She never met Eldrin Vale. But that didn't stop the speculation. Forums flooded with blurry images, half-proven theories, and timelines stretched to the edge of reason. Was it just coincidence? Or a connection buried under a decade of royal protocol? Even palace insiders weren't sure. One former aide said, "There were always whispers, but she was protected until now." And with Aldrich's credibility already destroyed, the question became, was he telling the truth? Or simply trying to take someone else down with him? As the internet tore through Mirana's past, another storm brewed inside palace walls. Prince Alistair, heir to the throne, had warned of Aldrich's danger for years, but now the scandal was spreading, and the monarchy had to act fast. By November 1st, meetings were held behind closed doors. The Waleses, Alistair and Ilara, would push for the final blow. And as Mirana's name burned through headlines, the crown prepared to do what it hadn't done in a century: remove 2 royals in one ruthless sweep. Prince Alistair's power move. The tension inside Kensley House, Prince Alistair's residence, was unlike anything seen in modern royal memory. On the morning of November 2nd, 2025, the heir to the throne summoned a crisis team of senior aides, military advisors, and the palace's constitutional experts. Prince Aldrich's confession had done more than name names. It had exposed a weakness in the crown. And Alistair, the once reserved prince, was no longer interested in caution. He was ready for the strike. For months, Alistair had warned that Aldrich was a ticking grenade. But after the leaked confession, he said only one thing behind closed doors: the institution will not burn for him. He chaired a high-security meeting in the Stag Room, once used only during wartime, and laid out what insiders later described as a surgical plan to fully sever Aldrich from the monarchy. It wasn't just about titles now, it was about removing his influence, his image, his ghost from the entire royal machine. That afternoon, a royal bulletin was issued from Buckmore Hall. Prince Aldrich's coat of arms was revoked, and his remaining trust income suspended indefinitely. Within 12 hours, his Northmere Lodge residence was reclaimed by the Crown Estates. Royal security around the property was withdrawn, and Aldrich's name was formally removed from all event invitations, charitable patronages, and official correspondence. He was, in essence, erased. Alistair's fingerprints were on every decision. Outside the palace walls, the public reaction was swift and divided. Some hailed Alistair as the strong leader the monarchy needed. Others whispered that the punishment bordered on brutal. But inside, there was no debate. The prince had made his move, not out of vengeance, but to preserve the only thing left untouched: the future. And for Alastair, there was no turning back. But as Aldrich's royal presence was systematically dismantled, another decision was quietly unfolding behind the palace's double doors, one that could change the face of the monarchy forever. This time, the target wasn't Aldrich. It was Lady Marana Hale, and while she remained silent in the Golden Hills of Montera, her past was now the subject of intense royal scrutiny. One meeting, one whispered comment from the king, and the message became clear. Two names would fall together: King Rowan's silent purge. The king had always been a man of traditions: tea at 4:15 p.m., handwritten notes on yellow parchment, formal dinners at Rosemore Court. But after 3 years of illness, King Rowan was a man changed, weakened in body, sharpened in purpose. He had already signed the decree removing Aldrich. But when presented with the growing public suspicion around Lady Marana Hale, he made a second, more controversial decision. It came during a private conversation with Alastair and Princess Ilara in the green drawing room at Balmoral. The question was simple: could the monarchy withstand a second firestorm? Rowan, after a long pause, answered with chilling clarity, "Both had to go. We do not clean half the wound." The quote would never be released publicly, but it marked the moment Marana's royal ties were effectively severed. Royal aides moved fast. Internal records show that by November 5th, the HRH styling previously retained by Marana in ceremonial archives was officially removed. A quiet order was issued to pull her name from royal patronage rosters. Historic wedding footage was archived under private access. Even digital references to the Duchess of Ellesmere were marked for removal on official royal sites. The official justification? Institutional clarity. But behind the scenes, sources admit the real reason was optics and self-preservation. The monarchy couldn't afford loose threads tied to the Eldrin Vale scandal, and as one advisor bluntly put it, her name lingered too close for too long. Whether Marana deserved the exile or not was no longer the question. The monarchy had made its choice, and with it, a new kind of brutality emerged, one cloaked in formality but cold as marble. And yet, amid all the precision and protocol, one figure remained steady, guiding quietly, speaking rarely, but watching everything. Princess Ilara, the soon-to-be queen, had stood beside her husband through the storm. But now she stepped forward, not with declarations, but with action. Her role wasn't to strike, it was to rebuild. And as the dust settled around Aldrich and Marana, Ilara became the pillar the monarchy leaned on most. What came next was not scandal, but strategy. Ilara's quiet power. If Prince Alastair was the hammer that reshaped the monarchy, Princess Ilara was the hand that steadied it. As scandal scorched headlines from London to Los Angeles, Ilara remained composed, elegant in appearance, measured in words, relentless in action. Inside Buckmore Palace, she personally convened a task force to reorganize the 27 displaced patronages left by Aldrich and Marana's removal. But it was more than redistribution. It was redefinition. She assigned herself to mental health initiatives and early childhood advocacy. She asked to meet victims' organizations affected by the Vale fallout. She even made quiet phone calls, unannounced, off the record, to charity directors in need of reassurance. "We are still with you," she told one team on November 7th. "This storm will pass." But Ilara's influence extended far beyond charity work. Behind the scenes, she began advising on media tone, rewriting palace press guidelines, and personally approving new hires to the Royal Communications Office. Insiders say her approach was surgical. She believed every word mattered now, every image, every facial expression in every frame. The monarchy's survival depended on precision and heart. Public reaction reflected the shift. Ilara's approval rating climbed to 89% across the Commonwealth, surpassing even Alastair. Tabloids once obsessed with scandal now ran features titled "The Steadiest Crown" and "Why Ilara is Already Queen." And at a state visit on November 10th, when a young girl handed her a drawing of a crown, Ilara smiled and simply said, "We all wear it differently." She didn't need a throne. She had something rarer, trust. And in a time when the monarchy teetered, trust was everything. But even as Ilara redefined grace under fire, the flames hadn't fully burned out. Across the sea, in a sun-drenched villa in Montera, Lady Mirana watched her title vanish and her public image flicker. And for the first time, she decided to answer back. Her team prepared a statement. Her legal counsel drafted options. And as the media waited, one question echoed louder than ever. Would Mirana stay silent or set the monarchy ablaze with what she knew? Mirana strikes back. Lady Mirana Hale did not stay silent. From her Montera estate in Santa Vida, surrounded by avocado groves and coastal fog, her spokesperson issued a fierce statement on November 12, 2025. The allegations made by Prince Aldrich are baseless, defamatory, and beneath the dignity of the crown. But Mirana wasn't stopping at words. Within 72 hours, she retained legal counsel in both the US and UK, sending pre-litigation notices to 3 tabloids and a prominent royal correspondent. Her legal team cited malicious misrepresentation and coordinated narrative damage. Behind the scenes, Mirana's inner circle debated whether to pursue a defamation suit against Aldrich directly. Public opinion split instantly. In the United Kingdom, nearly 61% polled believed the palace had acted justly in distancing from Mirana. But in the United States, she saw a dramatic rebound. Media outlets focused on her past philanthropy, casting her as a modern woman scapegoated by a traditional institution. Articles titled "The Duchess They Tried to Erase" and "Was It Misogyny All Along?" flooded social platforms. Still, the pressure was real. Brand partners of her lifestyle company, American Riviera Orchard, paused promotions. One streaming documentary was quietly postponed. In private, Mirana reportedly told her closest friend, "I survived Hollywood. I survived the palace. I can survive this." But survival now came with a cost. And with Prince Aldrich's words still echoing, Mirana was racing to control a fire that could easily devour everything she'd built. As Mirana waged her media and legal counterattack, a storm brewed inside another household, the Sussex estate. Prince Henrik, watching from afar, found himself pulled into a scandal he never invited. And while the crown remained silent on Mirana's status, Henrik's silence was weaponized against him. Now his wife's name was headline poison, and the palace he once escaped from had pulled him back in. Fallout across the ocean. Prince Henrik of Montera, formerly Duke of Everleigh, had left the palace for freedom. But the events of November 2025 brought his world crashing back into the very shadows he fled. After Aldrich's bombshell quote and the palace's quiet purge, Henrik faced a gut-wrenching reality. His wife had been named. His silence, once a shield, now looked like consent. On November 14th, Henrik released a personal statement. Prince Aldrich's comments are defamatory nonsense. My wife is not his scapegoat. Yet the damage had already begun. Archerwell International, their philanthropic foundation, saw two major sponsors request reputation assurance reviews. A New York Times piece questioned the optics of their UN connections during the years mentioned in Aldrich's claims. On social media, pro-royal accounts called for the Sussex titles to be revoked again. Inside their Montecito estate, the mood was grim. Staff reported reduced press access, tighter security, and increased legal activity. Sources say Henrik was furious and blindsided that Aldrich's words had been allowed to stand unchecked. And while Mirana held strategy meetings, Henrik reportedly made one quiet phone call to Princess Ilara. It was short, somber, and off the record. But royal aides confirmed the two had spoken. And although no truce was declared, it was clear. Not even an ocean could protect them now. As Mirana and Henrik fought for control of their reputations, the monarchy pressed forward. No rebuttals, no defenses, just silence, strategic and final. But inside the palace, it was anything but quiet. Prince Alistair and Princess Ilara gathered their core team to begin an overhaul. The scandal hadn't broken them, but it had exposed every crack. And now they were ready to rebuild from the ashes. Media frenzy and royal reform. In the wake of the most explosive royal scandal in decades, the media devoured every angle, every quote, photo, and moment of hesitation. Over 9,000 articles were published globally in the 2 weeks following Aldrich's interview. Leaks turned into exposes. Commentators debated guilt, motive, and monarchy like a global courtroom. But the Crown gave no press conferences, no clarifications, just one chilling response: reform. On November 20th, a quiet but powerful document was issued from the Royal Office of Modern Affairs, a department created just that year by Prince Alistair. It detailed new vetting protocols for royal events, mandatory ethics reviews for charitable partnerships, and a full audit of all royal patronage histories from 1995 to 2025. The reforms were sweeping, but one thing was clear: they were personal. Behind palace walls, Princess Ilara spearheaded the human side rebuild. She invited new mental health organizations into royal patronage and met with survivors of public institutional betrayal. Prince Alistair, in turn, took a harder path. He quietly removed 5 more minor royals from public duties, consolidating power in what the press began calling the Crown Circle. Meanwhile, Aldrich remained isolated, and Mirana faced a legal storm still growing. But the headlines began to change. Royal House Reborn. Alistair steps in as monarch in all but name. And one photo of Ilara embracing a child in Bristol, eyes full of calm, dominated newsstands. It was clear the monarchy was moving on, but not without cost. Yet, as reforms rolled out and headlines shifted, a final chapter was still being written. King Rowan, aged and frail, had remained silent through it all. But now, the Crown was preparing a final handoff. Alistair and Ilara weren't just heirs anymore. They were the new core. The world waited for the moment everything would become official. A new royal order. Buckingham Palace released a single-line announcement. At the King's direction, royal authority now rests with the Prince and Princess of Wales. There was no ceremony, no balcony wave, just a signal. King Rowan had formally stepped back. The reign was now, in practice, Prince Alistair's, and with Princess Ilara beside him, a new royal order quietly began. Their first act? A public address streamed from Rosemore Hall, modern, heartfelt, and delivered jointly. Alistair acknowledged the crown's mistakes, praising the strength of truth and the courage of change. Ilara, radiant and calm, said, "This monarchy belongs to the people, and it must serve with honesty." Over the next 10 days, the transformation became visible. Titles were reissued, new press codes enforced, and a previously unseen royal family portrait was released, featuring only the Waleses, their children, and 2 trusted senior aides. Gone were the excesses. Gone were the scandals. Even Aldrich and Marana's names were now sealed in private archives, an era deliberately closed. But whispers lingered. What had Marana kept hidden? Would she retaliate? And had Aldrich truly told all he knew? For now, none of that mattered. The crown had passed, not with gold and fanfare, but with resolve. Alistair and Ilara stood not as figureheads, but as guardians of a monarchy forever changed. Whether history would praise them or condemn them remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: the shadows were gone, and the throne had never burned brighter. The gates of Northmere Lodge closed for the last time under royal control. Prince Aldrich, now just Mr. Aldrich Grayson, stood in silence, watching the black Range Rover pull away. The last of his staff, the last of his status, all gone. What remained was a bitter man with no titles, no protection, and no audience. But he had made sure one thing wouldn't go quietly: his final words. His interview scorched headlines for days. The name he dropped, Lady Marana Hale, had ignited a wildfire. Some saw it as calculated vengeance, others as a last gasp for relevance. But regardless of motive, the effect was irreversible. Lady Marana's once polished image now teetered on the edge of collapse. In Montera, the mood at her estate turned from elegance to defense. Lawyers, crisis managers, and PR teams worked around the clock. She issued statements, denied all ties, highlighted her philanthropy, recalled her mistreatment, and still, the whispers lingered. Across the sea, inside the walls of Buckmore Palace, Prince Alistair and Princess Ilara remained unmoved. They had done what the crown demanded, removed rot, re-established order, and silenced chaos without lifting a sword. For them, this wasn't revenge. It was preservation. Behind closed doors, the king himself, Rowan, spoke only once. It is not cruelty to defend a kingdom. But even with Marana exiled and Aldrich erased, the monarchy bore new scars. Approval ratings had climbed, yes. Public trust had rallied behind Alistair and Ilara's strength. But the whispers of betrayal, guilt, and buried secrets would echo for years to come. Royal watchers called it the quietest war the palace ever fought. And still, the work was not done. Over the next 3 months, the monarchy underwent a sweeping transformation. 27 patronages were reassigned. 2 royal titles were permanently retired. Palace security was overhauled. A new code of conduct was drafted, one that placed transparency above lineage. Alistair called it the Charter of Light, a document meant to drag royal service out of the shadows. Princess Ilara, now more beloved than ever, doubled down on mental health initiatives, appearing at schools, shelters, and hospitals across the Commonwealth. Her quiet presence had become the monarchy's beating heart: grace, resilience, and dignity, wrapped in one. As for Aldrich, He vanished from public life. No interviews, no comebacks, just silence. Mirana, too, remained out of sight, her legal team still circling tabloids, her foundation on pause, her titles long gone. But if she had one weapon left, it was patience. Because some believed she wasn't done yet. And perhaps she wasn't. But the crown had spoken, and for now, the house of Alastair and Ilara stood tall. One prince fallen, one duchess disgraced, one monarchy reforged by fire. Whatever came next, one thing was clear. The age of silence was over, and the new royal era had just begun.